For those of you well versed enough in the internet and its iconography, you probably know exactly what this video is about just by the thumbnail. And for those who don't, I'm just going to make this quick, simple, and easy. I am autistic. I was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome as a little girl, which doesn't seem it. I've read up on it and it says it's like a former diagnosis, like you can't diagnose people with Asperger's specifically anymore, which confuses me a little, but it seems like the general consensus is it's just being autistic. So today I'm going to address some very common questions that people may have. So, from my understanding, it seems like stimming can either be like a pleasurable thing, just something that you do naturally, or something painful and irritating, kind of like a tic. I do stim, but it's mainly like a pleasurable thing, like I said. When I'm happy, I often kind of wave my arms a little like this. When I'm excited or happy, when people like say something really nice to me, I just like, it's just a sign that I'm just overflowing with happiness. Like when I hear news about any of my special interests, when someone drops by on my streams, you've probably seen me sort of do the hand waving thing on some of my live streams before. Yeah, so like it's just a sign that I'm really happy, and like if a person can make me do that, that's a sign that they are a person that makes me a person or thing that makes me very happy, and that I should stick with that thing. And it's like a sign of safety almost. I don't really know if this qualifies as stimming, but like I do pop joints a lot, cracking knuckles and neck and all that. It's just something that feels really good to me. Yippee! So, for some reason, a lot of people have this misconception that autistic people feel little to no empathy. And for me, it's the opposite. Like, I feel extreme empathy for others. Like, when my friends or family, when they're upset or sad, like, it really puts me in a bad mood. Even if it's like online friends posting a video about how like they had a bad day, like I just feel for them way too much sometimes. So yeah, I definitely feel a lot of empathy. Sometimes I wish, I didn't feel it as much. But yeah, so we all don't feel the same levels of empathy. A common saying that I've heard, which I find is very true, is that if you've met one autistic person, you have met one autistic person. Yippee! I wasn't aware of how controversial the TBH creature character was. I just thought that was like a symbol universally adopted by the autistic community, but some people find it offensive for valid reasons. Like calling him autism creature or his big stare. I personally don't mind. I think it's a really cute little character. And I like how it's sort of become this neurodivergence, autism rights movement icon. But like if you find it offensive, like that's totally okay. Like I can definitely see where you're coming from. But for me personally, I really like TBH as he's just kind of one of those subtle things that like you can put on a t-shirt or wear a pin of to make certain people aware. Kind of like the Ace of Spades symbol for asexuals. Like if you wear like a little Ace of Spades bracelet or necklace, like most people won't think anything of it. Like they might think like, oh, you love playing poker or something. But other asexuals will see and they'll notice and they'll know you're one of them. It's sort of like a secret code almost. Yippee! Eye contact can get a little hard for me sometimes. It's mostly just like prolonged eye contact that makes me uncomfortable. Like think of like having a staring contest with someone. Um, so like it just makes me a little uncomfortable. So I kind of have to look down at like maybe their nose or mouth for a few seconds, and then look back up at the eyes of the person I'm talking to. Same thing I kind of get in certain movies and TV shows, although it depends on like how realistic it is and what the context of the movie is. So, for example, the ending scene of Avatar, where it just zooms in on him and just opens his eyes and it just stays there, like that doesn't bother me because like it's clearly not a real person, but like the same shot with like an actual live actor, like I probably would find weird, and it's the context too. Like a creepy stare works perfectly in a horror movie. Like it doesn't bother me because it's a scary movie. It's supposed to scare me. But like if it's like a comedy or something, then I sort of find it a little weird. Actually, there are like certain animated characters that like make me uncomfortable when they just stare at the camera sometimes. Like I really play it up as like being scared and overreacting, but in reality, like I just think it's weird that there's this uncanny valley between real person and anime, and they're just staring at you. Like it's just kind of uncomfortable at worst. Like obviously, you know, the big one is Aerith from Final Fantasy VII Remake, and then also Yuffie and sometimes Tifa. Um, Sometimes Claire from Resident Evil, and I think Jill sometimes definitely has that uncanny valley, sort of like, is it a person or is it an animation kind of look. It's weird, I've noticed that like it mostly happens with female characters for me. Speaking of Resident Evil, Jack and Lucas from Seven kind of have that weird stare thing going on, but like the little girl like doesn't bother me at all. I think she's really cool. So yeah, it just kind of depends really. It's a very situational thing for me. So I have a lot of like sensory issues when it comes to certain foods. Like there's just some foods that I just can't stand the texture of. Like I really hate the way it feels in my mouth. Like there's certain fruits, for example, that I just don't like the way it feels to bite into it. Or certain vegetables. So a lot of the times, like instead of just crunching into like an apple or something, I much prefer to have like some other form of fruit, like whether it be juice, a puree, you know, ice lolly, candy, all that stuff. I really really like. And it is kind of hard sometimes when like there's one food that you know you like, but it varies so much the way you cook it that like it can either turn just the way you like it or like completely foreign and alien. Like chicken, for example. I really like chicken, you know, in all forms, you know. I like your fast food chicken, you know, roasted chicken, all that. But like the way like for example like my family cooks chicken can be so different from the way like your family cooks chicken that when I eat chicken from your family, like it kind of overwhelms my palate sometimes. Sound sensitivity is very situational for me. Like I get really overwhelmed if like I'm in a space with a lot of crowds and like there's just talking all around me. But like at a marching band concert where like probably if you measured in decibels it'd be way louder, like I'm totally fine, you know, because that's what I came here for. You know, I came to get my face ripped off by these horns. Um, but yeah, it's very very situational for me. I also really don't like balloons popping. Like it just makes me anxious sometimes when I see helium balloons and like when there's kids around. Like the sound of them popping just like really startles me and just kind of like ruins like a party atmosphere. Smells are a big one too. There's certain smells that just really, really bother me. Like, it just really puts me in a bad mood to be like, to have prolonged exposure to certain smells. Like, I guess best way to describe it is like, it fills up your nose and like, it just distracts you from everything else you're thinking about. Like, kind of like when you have a bad injury and it's all you can think about. So certain stuff like that for me, bacon and red meat, I just really can't stand the smell. Like a McDonald's hamburger like doesn't really have a specific smell to me, but if you're like cooking red meat in the kitchen, like that smell really bothers me. As for touch, I think for me it's less of an issue with me touching things and more of an issue with things touching me. Like there's certain fabrics or clothing material that I just won't wear just because it feels so uncomfortable to me. Like I won't wear jeans. I just really don't like the feeling of denim like on my bare skin. It's like a jean jacket or something where I have like a shirt under, then it's fine. But I just don't like the way denim feels on bare skin. I also don't like when someone touches me in like a completely unexpected situation. Like I'd rather people ask first. Like I'm fine with hugs and stuff like that, but like when someone taps me on the shoulder, like to show me something, that really bothers me. Like I'd rather them just call my name or something like that. Like if it's in something like a haunted house attraction, I'm fine because like I know like that stuff's gonna happen there. But if someone just does it randomly, then yeah, it does bother me. I don't really think I have any like sight sensory issues besides like prolonged eye contact. It seems that a lot of people have problems with like flashing lights and like certain bright colors and that kind of stuff, which I can understand. But like some of my hyperfixations and special interests include amusement parks and haunted house attractions in the horror industry, which is kind of like the standard of those types of things. Like a lot of indoor theme park rides and haunted houses will have flashing lights. Depending on the theme, a lot of like clown themed stuff has like bright neon colors, which I really do like. That look. So it's just always something that I've been around and has never really bothered me. So yes, I do have hyperfixations and way too many. Like it's stuff across the board. Like I'd say Pokemon has been my longest hyperfixation. Like I've loved it since I was like a little kid. But like I don't just fixate on like video game things. Like I love like theme park attractions, marching band, all that sort of stuff, the sort of niche stuff that no one really thinks about. I hyperfixate on. So when I do hyperfixate, like it's just something that I think about a lot. Like if you think about the thoughts in your brain as a cycle, like they'll kind of fit in there sometimes. Like not enough to distract me from like doing things I need to do. Just kind of like passive thoughts that appear from day to day. So like I guess the best way to visualize it is if you think about like thoughts in your brain as a cycle, like it just comes in hyperfixations just kind of come in between like every major thing. So it's like gotta make dinner, maybe think about some marching band stuff, gotta wash the dishes, think about some Pokemon stuff, kind of like that. I also get hyperfixated on my own creations a lot. World I build for imaginary things. And oftentimes, like, I'll create things based on existing media. Like, a lot of my hyperfixations inspire me to create something. I'm almost like a spin-off. So, I create, original characters for existing media, and then they kind of spin off into a world unto their own. So, like, if you've watched anything relating to Orwellian Wires and Friends, you might be familiar with my take on the universe of Devil May Cry, for example. Like, the world of Devil May Cry, there isn't really much lore to it. Like, the world building is more focused on the characters. So, like, Orwell and Friends, it just kind of creates this whole universe for it that wasn't really there in the first place. Like, for example, Fortuna leads this cult that never existed in the games. Mars is an angel, which, I mean, if you count Credo Angelo, I mean, like, Nero says he's a demon. He looks like, I don't know. But, like, Mars kind of implies the existence of, like, a heaven, even though we know there's a hell in Devil May Cry. So, like, I just kind of take something and add my own spin onto it, even if it doesn't really fit the canon. Like, again, going back to the Devil May Cry example, Jezebel definitely doesn't look like a character that would inhabit the universe of Devil May Cry, but she's my own character. She's my own take on it. She can just be this, happy-go-lucky, sort of kawaii-looking, creepy girl, and that's just who she is. Nero loves her for it, and it adds to the scare factor. A lot of my original characters are built to star in horror movies or work as scare actors, aside from, just being on YouTube. Same thing kind of happened with Resident Evil as well. Like, I like the canon. Some of it's interesting, but it's a little wacky, if I must say so myself. So I just, much like DMC, I just kind of took my own spin on it from the very simple concept of, here are these characters I created. They are the girlfriends of characters from Resident Evil, and then I end up, giving them their own backstories, and now they're sort of their own thing, almost like their own little franchise. So yeah, I hyperfixate on stuff I create. I could spend hours and hours talking about, like, how I don't know, like, how Mrs. Wesker picked up a rock one day and, somehow that ended up leading to the collapse of the global economy or whatever. But yeah, those are only a couple of my hyperfixations. I should do a whole video on it one of these days. Yippee! I think it's because of movies and television, but a lot of people seem to have this impression that, like, autistic people just, like, calculate everything in their brains. It's really weird. Like, I think a lot of shows and movies get, like, symptoms of autism mixed up with symptoms of obsessive compulsive disorder. So autistic people are often portrayed, like, organizing everything in their space until it's perfect. But for me, that might be a view held by some autistic people, but for me personally, I much prefer chaos to order. And I'm going to show you what I mean with a simple example of a toy shelf. So when most people have something like a collection of toys, for example, they try and organize it in a way that makes sense to them. So it could be organizing toys by franchise, like My Little Pony goes here, Final Fantasy goes here. It could be organizing them by color. Here are my pink toys, and here are my blue toys. Some people might organize them by function. Here are action figures, and here are Funko Pops. Or they just try and sort them by any other quality that makes them homogeneous. So, like, here are scary toys who are, like, villains and from horror franchises, and then here are cute toys. But my brain just doesn't work that way. I don't like perfection. I don't like sorting things out and classifying them. That's just not the way my brain works. So how would someone like me display this toy collection? And my answer to you is any way any way you want, any way you can think of. Like, certain things just look really cool together, and they don't have to be a part of a set or go together in any specific way. They just look good to me in that way. You know, I don't organize things in any specific way. Like, I like to cluster things, you know. Some of my things are close together, and then some of them are very far apart. Let me show you another example, this time with wall art. So some people that collect art might want to display things like this. They put their frames all of the same size together, you know, each one having the perfect amount of space apart or something like that. And, you know, maybe it looks good to them, and I value that. You know, I very much appreciate different perspectives on aesthetic. But for me, especially if it's in like somebody's house rather than like a public art gallery, it feels very cold, robotic, and uninviting when everything is just like measured to perfection. Like, everything is the same size and shape. So, like, a display of art made by me would probably look a little more like this. So, you know, you have things of different shapes and sizes, you know, all sort of just gathered around together. You know, there's no order of like largest to smallest. They all just kind of like coexist together in just this one space. That's just kind of my personal design philosophy, and whenever it comes to organizing and anything really, whether it be art or toys, clothes, or books, I just don't find perfection natural. To me, you know, pardon my Final Fantasy joke, but chaos is what's natural to me. So I hope that answered some questions about myself that you may have. And if you have any more questions, you know, don't be afraid. Just comment below, you know. I'll answer them and maybe put them in a video if I get enough. And remember, if you've met one autistic person, you've met one autistic person.